Somebody's calling my name. Hush, children, hush.
Do you know who Thaddeus Stevens is? Oh no, now I'm going to be embarrassed because I don't know it. Who is he?
Thaddeus Stevens, I'm not quite sure.
Oh, Thaddeus Stevens. Yes, uh-huh.
Oh, you do?
I think I do. Well, I know he has a house in Lancaster.
Thaddeus Stevens was an 18th century architect who founded the Chatham School of Design. He hailed from Wales. That's about all I know, really. I'm sorry, that was really smart. I don't. I know that there's a Thaddeus Stevens School of Technology.
Thaddeus Stevens, Jim. Help me out.
No, I know the name for some reason, but I don't know who it is.
Well, I know trade school is named for him in the city.
Right.
Yeah, and I think his house is an historical spot. I mean, I think people can go to his house. But
well, I know who he is. I know, not really, I guess.
Thaddeus Stevens was never actively discussed in class. I was always been a history buff, and I don't remember ever hearing anything about Thaddeus Stevens.
He was one of the most well-known Americans to the common man, and then sort of fell into a state of being unknown.
I remember very faintly and mostly the fact that our church would every year on his birthday would have a pilgrimage. They would walk from the church down to his gravesite to pay tribute to him and honor to him for his views and what he's done for African Americans and others.
Oh, absolutely. People don't know who he is. And that's the big question, why?
I think possibly it happened because of the movie Birth of a Nation, which depicted him as a very evil man, rather than the civil rights leader that he really was.
Birth of a Nation was released in 1915 to a public still new to the burgeoning movie industry. The first special effects spectacle, Birth of a Nation wowed its audiences with epic battle scenes, never-before-seen special effects, and larger-than-life sets that paved the way for the big-budget blockbuster hit of today. It also caused a national uproar with its highly racist depiction of blacks and its nostalgic depiction of the antebellum South as a utopian society.
D.W. Griffin is considered the father of cinema, and his film Birth of a Nation is considered one of the greatest films ever made. A lot of times they still try to gloss over the fact that was, as I said before, was used as a recruiting tool for the Klan.
When you consider the power of the media in all of its forms, whether it's TV or film or newspapers, you really have to appreciate how images influence people and how they think.
That film appeared in 1916, and within 5 years, the Ku Klux Klan was as strong, if not stronger, than it was after the Civil War.
And it was the use of the media, this new, fresh, powerful way to tell a story that took a lot of people by storm, basically.
Birth of the Nation, I think, it was the most effective propaganda vehicle, one of the most effective of all time. And for its time, it was probably the best vehicle developed to mobilize negative forces. In other words, I think it was probably one of the most racist films ever made.
The film did a whole lot of damage.
The Thaddeus Stevens character, called Austin Stoneman in the movie, is depicted as a ruthless man who is led astray by the wiles of a black woman. He is depicted as a man who wants to make the South bleed and threatens the very social fabric with the enfranchisement of newly freed black voters.
Not this again. The Birth of a Nation. It was not like that.
William Bitzer is a professional photographer by trade. but in his spare time he brings to life figures from America's past through historical reenactment. Of all the figures Bitzer reenacts, his favorite is a relatively unknown Thaddeus Stevens.
I think the first thing he was most proud of was the public school issue, guaranteeing an education for people who don't have a lot of money. The man instrumented the 13th, 14th, and to some degree the 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, guaranteeing people freedom in this country no matter what their color.
He was born with a club foot, which immediately cast him as, in those days, if you were born with any kind of deformity, you were considered evil, like you were a child of the devil, some folks thought. So he was ostracized a lot as a youth. He learned to ride a horse, I think I read somewhere, so he tried to be athletic even though he had this handicap.
Towards the end of his tenure in Washington, he was carried in on a stretcher for important votes. And what more dedication do you want than that? I mean, he didn't go to a spa every other day. He was there in the front lines fighting for the little guy.
One cannot talk about Thaddeus Stevens without talking about Lydia Hamilton Smith as well. Originally hired as Stevens' housemaid, Stevens treated her with a grace and respect uncommon for its time. Darlene Colon started reenacting Lydia Hamilton Smith through her position as president of the Christiana Historical Society.
First comment through her I saw through Birth of a Nation, where she was portrayed as a seductress, gold digger kind of lady to get her way, using men to get what she wanted. But in all my research, I found her to be a very docile lady, a very, very adamant Catholic. She was labeled as a person who never turned anybody away from help. If you needed help, she would do her utmost to give you help, whatever it was. They were very fond of each other and very cared about what happened to one another, even so that she was there with him on his deathbed in D.C., and she hired some nuns out of the local convent to come and care for him and was there with him when he died.
There's a portrait of Lydia Hamilton Smith that was painted in the 1840s, probably about the time that she came to Lancaster and became Thaddeus Stevens' housekeeper and property manager. This portrait indicates that there was much more than an employer-employee relationship. For him to hire the premier portrait painter of the time to paint a picture of a woman close to him indicated something much, much deeper than was believed up to that point.
I'm not suggesting that they were lovers or that they were not lovers. I think in his place I probably would have tried because she was really, really attractive. But it's obvious that she was more than just his housekeeper.
Through Stevens, I think she learned a great deal because she came there as a housekeeper. Through him, she learned how to handle finances, moved up from housekeeper to manages his home as well as the rest of the servants. She also learned to parlay her own money so that she became one of the wealthiest women in this area. She bought her own property, had many houses throughout Lancaster, as well as in Washington, D.C.
I was looking at the will, and she may have owned as many as 10 or 12 properties in Lancaster County, or in Lancaster City. And she was able, in the middle of the Civil War, to buy a house.
And by the way, Thaddeus Stevens sold her the home that we know today as being hers in 1860. And it was apparently her own money. It wasn't like a giveaway. And I think, and a lot of other people think, that this was a demonstration by Thaddeus Stevens to show that if African American people could own property, eventually perhaps have the right to vote, to be able to have their own wealth, to earn wealth, that was another way to demonstrate that those society equalizers could produce a more open and free society.
I think the association is like pretty much what I use in one of my presentations, that I'm Thaddeus Stevens, the best friend black folks ever had. And I think that's pretty accurate.
Thaddeus Stevens' commitment to equality may have included breaking the Fugitive Slave Act, a law which required escaped slaves to return to their owners. An archaeological dig discovered 2 cisterns in the backyard of his house. These cisterns could easily hide runaway slaves, and historians think that Stevens' house may have been a stop on the Underground Railroad. His house was originally slated for destruction. A convention center for visitors to Lancaster was going to be built on the property. Instead, The Stevens House will be incorporated into an historical interpretive site, so visitors to the area can learn more about his role in American history.
The Thaddeus Stevens and Lydia Hamilton Smith project will bring a very rich opportunity to the community to learn more about Thaddeus Stevens and what he did not only for this community but for our nation.
I think it'll help a great deal because our school children will have a place to go to learn about two American heroes, or a hero and a heroine, Lydia Hamilton Smith. I think the whole project with the convention center will be hugely enhanced by this historic interpretive site. So it's an archaeologically, architecturally, historically important thing.
Just the fact that we could raise the awareness of what Thaddeus Stevens stood for is probably the biggest contribution that it could make to society, I would guess.
I think an educational center is a good idea. I think one of the ways that we deal with uncomfortable truths is to confront them. By hiding behind doors, that doesn't solve any issues at all.
Any community that has stuff that happened, that was part of history, very important part of history, that should be preserved and should be shared with people. You got people walking around here, no matter where it is, they could be part of a very historic area and not even know the history that's taking place there, because education is not taken. People have not been educated to this stuff, and so centers, all this stuff, is good.
Somebody's calling my